My name is Niall Ferguson, and I am one of the founders of the University of Austin. I'm a trustee, a member of the Board of Trustees. My day job is that I'm a historian. I've written a great many history books. I've taught at a multitude of universities: Cambridge, Oxford, New York University, Harvard, and I'm now based at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, where I am the Milbank Family Senior Fellow. It was back in 2020 when a group of us met here in Austin, where we're having this conversation. And Barry Weiss was there, and Arthur Brooks was there, and Pano Kanellos was there, and I think Heather Hying was there, and Joe Lonsdale himself. And what had brought us together was a belief that the state of higher education in the United States and the Western world generally was so awful, so disastrous, that we had to create a new university, that the old ones couldn't be repaired. So there was a general feeling, a growing feeling within academia, that the rot had gone so far that the established institutions could not easily be salvaged, and we had to do something. So we decided there and then, pretty much on the spot, to create a new university, and we started talking about how to do it. From the very outset, skeptics said to me, "You'll fall victim to Conquest's law," or sometimes O'Sullivan's law. This law is variously attributed to Robert Conquest or John O'Sullivan, and it says any institution that isn't explicitly conservative will end up being pathetically progressive. In other words, you'll just end up being like all the other universities. And my answer to that is no. First of all, we shouldn't think of a university as a political project. And I think explicitly to found a conservative university would be a somewhat futile endeavor at this point. Secondly, we've created a governance structure that's designed to prevent the pathologies that have made so many universities today centers of groupthink, conformism, and wokeism. This may sound somewhat technical, but if you ask the question, why have all these great universities lost their way? Now, when I say they've lost their way, what I mean is that it can't be right that nearly 2/3 of students across America say that they don't feel able to speak freely in class, that they self-censor. And that is true across the board. So at the University of Austin, we've rethought academic governance. We spent a lot of time, I tried to coordinate this effort, drafting a constitution. And this constitution has a very distinctive feature that I think is unique. There is an executive branch. This may sound familiar to students of the United States Constitution. There's an executive branch, which is the president and the provost and all of those people who run the place. And there's a legislative branch, but that's very clearly the Board of Trustees. But there's also a judicial branch. There is also a body, which we've called the adjudicative board, which will uphold the Constitution. So that if somebody, whether it's the president or for that matter some professor, or even a group of students, if somebody challenges the Constitution, then they can be brought to that adjudicative body and it can rule on whether their action was unconstitutional. That has been lacking at all the major universities all along. Your rights, whether it's as a professor or as a student, are spelt out in the Constitution. We have a Bill of Rights, just like the US Constitution. And those rights can't be violated, and they include freedom, academic freedom, freedom to say what you want to say, explore the ideas you want to explore without fear of denunciation and discipline. They also include clear rules about how decisions should be made, about admissions, about promotions, about graduation. You can't base that on any kind of discrimination. It has to be based on clearly stated and meaningful criteria of merit, of potential, and so on. So I think this is one of the really significant innovations about the University of Austin. We will uphold academic freedom. We will uphold the rules of merit. We will have a system of due process because it's in the Constitution, and if you don't stick to it, you'll have to face consequences. I think the second thing that will really make a huge difference is practical. In our classrooms, we will apply what we're going to call the Austin rules. One of them is an old and familiar rule the Chatham House rule. Everybody's kind of heard of Chatham House, at least they know the rule. But it specifically says you can't quote something said in a classroom or at a meeting and attribute it to somebody. So that's one of our rules, but we'll have some others. An important rule will be that there won't be devices, phones, or for that matter, laptops in classrooms. And there'll be a clear prohibition on putting material that arises in a classroom on social media. That means that there'll be some meaningful confidentiality about what is said. And it'll certainly be wholly out of the question that somebody should report a professor or a student for something that they said. In fact, anybody who attempts to inform on their classmates or on faculty will face quite severe disciplinary consequences. The result is that our classrooms will be places where you can speak freely, where you can say the idea in your head, even if it seems a little crazy, but you want to try it out. A little bit like universities used to be. I'm old enough to remember when that was the case. And I think that will make a really profound and positive impact on the way the university works. I'll give you one more thing that is new. All too often, university governments, presidents, provosts are drawn into making statements about political issues, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Hamas and Israel. That's prohibited under our constitution. The university as a corporate body does not have anything to say about politics because universities should not be political institutions. Oh, you can study politics at a university, but the university should not do politics. If people want to invite political figures to come and speak on the University of Austin campus, they can. There'll be a student debating society, I hope there'll be more than one, which will be in a position to do that. But that will be the responsibility of a self-governing student society. It won't be something that the president or the deans or anybody else has a say over. And that separation will be very important because it will mean that we won't be endorsing anybody that happens to be invited by a student group. And that's something that's gone very wrong at established universities, and it's given rise to what's become known as cancel culture. So there are three, I think, major ways in which the University of Austin will be very different, very, very different from other universities. Different governance, different classroom culture, and some real self-government for students who want to do politics. It's a kind of adventurous spirit that I think we want to attract. You've got to be adventurous to want to explore all the different fields of human knowledge. And you've got to be very adventurous to want to do it at a new institution. So that's my vision. I don't want our students to be all alike. I'm sure they'll all be smart. But the important thing is that they should have real intellectual diversity. We want a classroom in which there isn't one single view. We want a classroom in which there is real debate. Now, my experience is that if you take a bunch of smart people from very different and diverse backgrounds and give them the freedom to explore the intellectual frontier, they won't all come to the same conclusions. So I don't worry too much about the problem of groupthink. But it's extraordinarily important that we attract people who want to explore, to debate, and to learn for the love of learning. Because university is not just some kind of instrumental enterprise. You go for the credential in order to get the job. It's much, much more than that. It's the great opportunity that anybody has in their life to try just about everything. And we want people who are really willing to run the experiment. It's an experiment you never get the chance to run again. It's an experiment with your own mind. And our university is going to be like a giant laboratory for experiments on brilliant minds. One of the things that shocked me when I started to work in the United States was the way university admissions worked, and it took me a few years to figure it out. It dawned on me after a while that there were students there really because their parents had been there or their parents were generous donors, and there were students who were there because of various affirmative action systems, and therefore there were about a third of students who were there on academic merit, which is a kind of strange way of doing things. The University of Austin is committed to fairness in admissions. We have a constitutional mandate to ensure that students are not admitted on the basis of any kind of discrimination based on race, religion, or anything else. Our main interest is in intellectual potential, potential for leadership. Our admissions won't be done by bureaucrats, but by faculty. The deans will do the admissions. And that's important because you should be in charge of admitting the people you're going to teach. And we ask our potential students different questions because what we're seeking are different things from the things currently being sought by established universities. If you're a student or a parent going through this process right now, it's like something out of Franz Kafka. You have to write essays in which you essentially perjure yourself in making a whole series of commitments that you think the university wants to hear. We want to get away from that. We want people to write honestly about their ambitions and about their motives in applying to our university. So I think transparency in admissions is one of the really original things that we'll be doing. And it's something that is desperately needed. One of the things I've learned in my life is that the default setting is not to innovate. That the average human being doesn't really want to be a founder or an entrepreneur, to build something new. The average human being doesn't want to do such difficult things. And that means that a lot of innovative entrepreneurial talent goes wasted, never gets used, because people are taught, don't take that risk, settle for a steady job, take the safe option. Now, I think what's exciting about what we're building here is that we're explicitly saying to young people, you can be a founder. You can start building something new right now. Don't just go to university, help build a university. Nobody ever said anything like that to me when I was 17. It took me years to realize that if I wasn't satisfied with Oxford or Harvard, I could build something new. I didn't start getting involved in building companies until I was in my late 30s. And then I discovered that there's no satisfaction like creating something from scratch. There really is nothing more fulfilling than starting with an idea on the back of an envelope and turning it into a reality that then generates jobs and opportunities for others. So part of, I think, what motivates us, it was shared by all of us when we met back then when it was just an idea, was the sense that we can create a culture of innovation, of founding, that will make that the first thing you try and do. If we can only unlock that potential that I think exists in many, many people, then we'll do an enormous amount of good. The United States is a place for doing new stuff. That's what makes it different from Europe, where most of the time we're just trying to stop the old stuff from falling down. Doing new stuff is what makes America spectacular. And so the point of a new university is in itself a very American thing. But what about a university that is specifically designed to encourage people to do new things, to be founders? That is an amazing idea with enormous potential to change the world. The first thing about the University of Austin to remember is that we cannot fail. We have to show that it's still possible in the United States of America to create a new university and make it a world-class university and show the world how academic freedom works. I think we'll succeed because I think there's an appetite amongst young people for intellectual freedom. There's a hunger to explore the frontier without fear. So I'm confident there are perhaps tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of students who want to come here, who will want to apply here. And that means that if we fast forward 20 years, the University of Austin should be a large institution with a very substantial undergraduate and graduate body, comparable in size to any of the major universities today. But we're building the university of the future. I think one of the things that will differentiate the University of Austin is that in addition to the hub of this incredible university that we're building, there will be a global virtual university that will make our content accessible, not just to the lucky few who get in, but to everybody. My ambition has always been to democratize knowledge. I don't think it's right that it should only be available to the lucky few. I think everybody should have access to it. And that is possible now in a way that it wasn't when I was 17. We have the technology now to make our content available everywhere. And my hope is that we will be able to exploit the new possibilities created by the internet and by artificial intelligence to make the University of Austin a trusted source for intellectual content everywhere in the world. So I think the University of the future won't just be a beautiful campus with amazing buildings and brilliant students having profound conversations and writing awesome papers. But if that's all we achieve, then it will leave me on my deathbed dissatisfied. But if we can build a university that's truly global, that makes the frontier of knowledge accessible even to a kid in the slums of Nairobi, then we'll have achieved something truly world-changing. And that is my modest ambition for the University of Austin.